Alright, I am back with another video, and yes, much like the Gale video, I know what you're thinking. You've seen the title, you've seen the thumbnail. What am I doing making Lae'zel a Ranger Druid? Now, hear me out on this one, because I think, again, I've got a pretty interesting, if you kind of squint a little bit, there's an interesting way that this could be worked into Lae'zel's lore, but I think could make this make sense. But I know the biggest thing that people are going to be looking at is Ranger. Now, I will say, I have made origin builds for Lae'zel quite a few times now. I've made her a Paladin, I've made her a Fighter, I've made her a Monk. All of those would work for this build. Monk, I think, would work especially well, but even so, I do think you'd gain a lot of value out of Fighter or Paladin. They all kind of fit this build quite well, so honestly, it's kind of a pick what you want to use for, your martial levels here. You can kind of just pick whatever. But I wanted to give Ranger a try because I genuinely think it adds some stuff to this build, and I think with the lore that I'm going for, it actually does kind of make the most sense out of all of these options. Now, again, I'll kind of explain myself in full, but basically the idea of this build is that I wanted to use Stars Druid for kind of a warrior of the astral plane. I also know that the astral plane is not space. They are two very different things. To explain it in a way that I think would make sense to most people, space is regular space, and the astral plane is kind of like the space between spaces, the space between the planes. It is a little bit tricky to understand, and most people's knee-jerk reaction would obviously be to be like, okay, so the astral plane is this world's version of space, got it. Not quite right. However, you cannot deny, especially because of things like Spelljammer, that the astral plane, the astral sea, which is kind of like the mix of the astral plane and regular space, it's kind of strange, at least from my understanding of it, and like all of that, there is definitely a connection between the astral plane and space as a whole. So in my opinion, my personal opinion, I do think for a warrior of the astral plane, which is what Lae'zel is going to be in this video, Circle of the Stars Druid being used to amplify both our magic and our martial combat, which again Githyanki are known for both, I feel like it's a new and interesting take, making an interesting usage out of our new Circle of Stars subclass. Now, think about it like this for a minute. Lae'zel, when we meet her at the start of the game, is, yes, she's a well-trained Githyanki warrior. Yes, she knows how to handle herself, but she's still somewhat fresh-faced compared to other Githyanki. She's very, very naive, very, very loyal to Vlaakith and such like that, and is very eager to prove herself not only to Vlaakith, but to her compatriots and even to herself. And I think we could go down a route of a Lae'zel who is very, very much into studying. And this sounds a bit strange, but hear me out. A lot of Githyanki training is about studying techniques, studying how to beat mind flayers, studying how to cast spells, studying how to be efficient warriors. Well, what if, while going through the grand archives of her crash, Lae'zel finds some ancient rituals, some ancient combat methods that are directly connected to the astral plane? Maybe these books have been long since forgotten, or perhaps even banished by Vlaakith, because maybe this style of combat is more akin to something that Orpheus would have done, so maybe these books were sequestered away somewhere after Vlaakith kind of tried to remove all traces of Orpheus from Githyanki history. And I feel like she would find these books and find an ancient ritual about how to mystically connect yourself to the power of the astral plane, making it so that you gain more power, both when it comes to spell casting, using healing magic, being able to maintain concentration, but also being able to channel that power into new attacks, like the bow and arrow attack or the dragon breath attack, making both your ranged, melee, and overall spellcasting a lot more potent. Again, I could see a monk version of this build being highly connected to Orpheus using this type of playstyle. And with this as well, we're also going to be able to mix this with Ranger, since it's more it's better for the ability score kind of distribution, because obviously we're wisdom based. But again, you can use this with Fighter, you can use this with Monk, which I think would be very interesting. That's going to be its own build in the future, and even Paladin with the kind of theming of radiant damage. So I actually think that you can take this build in so many different ways, mixing Stars Druid with Lae'zel and one of the martial classes to really make this something special. So I'm quite happy to present this all to you today, and I feel like if you guys hear me out, you're going to see why this build can work so well. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. Kicking things off with a Ranger. Now, like I say, Ranger at the start is going to give us all our armor and weapon proficiencies that we want. And I like this because, again, it gives us all of that martial training that we like, but I also like the idea of Ranger since it is more connected to the world around you. It kind of plays like we're almost making, a Stars Ranger. Because we now are connected to the wider feeling of the world around us, because we are connected to the astral plane in a sense, and we have that overall sense of awareness increased, I think it makes sense for a lot of the ranger-based abilities to come through in that combat style. I mean, a Githyanki ranger isn't out of the realm of possibility, so I think it's worth exploring. Speaking of which, let's look at Favoured Enemy, in which we're going to pick up Ranger Knight, allowing us to use heavy armour and gaining skill proficiency in History. In my personal opinion, History makes sense for this kind of lore that we're going for here. As you know, if we have a very studious Lae'zel who has studied many ancient Githyanki combat techniques, then having a History score makes sense, even though our intelligence is a bit on the low side. We also have Natural Explorer, allowing us to pick one of the following options. Beast Tamer, Urban Tracker both exist, but honestly, we don't really need either of those, so it's going to definitely be one of the Wasteland Wanderers, and I recommend Fire. Since the stars, and by extension things like the sun, are literal giant balls of very, very hot stuff, I feel it makes sense that with that connection we gain a resistance to fire damage. Overall, it just makes sense. Quickly going back to the Favoured Enemy though, I could see why somebody who's not using medium armor, maybe we're going for a dexterity who's not using heavy armor, maybe going for a dexterity based build, might want to use Sanctify Stalker to gain Sacred Flame. I could absolutely see that as well. I mean, obviously it would fit the build, so that's an option as well. Just thought I'd mention that before I forgot. But anyways, ability scores. We are a strength-based build because that's personally how I see Lae'zel more than anything. I think a lot of people can agree with me on that. So we're starting off with a 16 in strength here, as it is our main attacking modifier. We got dexterity at 10, as we are wearing heavy armor, so we don't need as much dexterity. Unfortunately, our initiative rolls aren't going to be the greatest, but we'll find that's not really going to affect the build in the long run. Constitution is at 14. I would like this higher, and to be honest, you could dump Charisma down to 8, pop a 15 into this, and use Ethel's hair if you want to boost up this as well. But again, that's entirely up to you. But I actually found with the amount of tankiness that this build's going to have by the time we're done, 14 is not a deal breaker. Intelligence is at 8. Unfortunately, that's just how it has to be. We have to dump something, and that was the choice. Wisdom is at 16. This is going to be our main spellcasting modifier, as well as our main modifier for our Circle of Stars abilities. And also we have Charisma at 10, because Lae'zel is a soldier, meaning that she's going to have athletics and intimidation proficiency right off the bat, and I didn't necessarily want our intimidation to be negative here. We're also going to gain history from our feature like we already discussed, and we can pick 3 ranger starting proficiencies. I've gone with insight, perception, and survival, as those are kind of the main wisdom skills that I feel like we will use. So yeah, that's level 1. Moving on to level 2 of Ranger, we are going to get to choose a couple of level 1 spells, and there are 2 that I'm immediately going to grab. Hunter's Mark and Ensnaring Strike. Yeah, pretty typical choices. Hunter's Mark I like in this build because, again, it's literally us marking a target and being able to do additional damage to them, which is going to feel pretty damn good. If we later combine this with one of our Circle of Stars features, we're basically never going to drop concentration, so we will always have this up, meaning that we can just repeatedly slash people for extra damage. And again, I like the idea of a Githyanki warrior marking a target and being able to hunt them down. That feels very Githyanki. As well as Ensnaring Strike just to reduce our enemy's movement. I didn't use this a lot in my testing, there was just never really a good reason for it to come up, especially with the concentration, but you never know. Obviously there are other options you can pick if you so desire, but we will be able to get most of these spells in a minute from Druid. We also do get to pick a fighting style, and unfortunately Ranger doesn't get Great Weapon, not Great Weapon Master, Great Weapon Fighting, so we do just have to pick something that's going to work out well for us. Archery can work for ranged weapon attacks if you do decide to bring a bow on this build, but of course we're going to be using the Circle of Stars bow, so that's not really a huge deal for us, and obviously none of these other ones really work, so we're just going to bring defense here for a bit of extra armor class, since the armor that I've chosen, while it is heavy armor, does have a slightly lower AC than normal, so we will need a little bit more, so defense is going to help with that. At Ranger level 3, we're not going to take it quite yet. We're actually going to jump over to Druid now, so we can start getting our Circle of Stars abilities, since we want to hit that level 2 of Druid as quick as we can. We're also going to get Enhanced Sleep from this level, which is nice, but we're also going to get able to pick up a couple of cantrips. I would say for your cantrips, there's not really a lot of options here, unfortunately, as we are going to get guidance as soon as we pick Circle of Stars for free, so we can't really take that. I just decided to grab Produce Flame and Resistance, Produce Flame just being a fun extra cantrip that fits the theme of the build, dealing fire damage, as well as you can kind of just leave it on your arm, illuminating you, as well as giving you a you know, like a blue flame arm effect, which I think is really cool, but actually that self-illumination is going to matter for this build, so we definitely want Produce Flame here, and Resistance is just a free little buff that will come up situationally. Moving on to our prepared spells, we're going to want a little bit of everything when it comes to utility. I personally recommend Longstrider for more movement speed, Enhanced Leap because it's part of the Githyanki moveset anyway, and now we get to use it as much as we want. And also Healing Word and Cure Wounds. We're going to want some pretty free healing on this build. Not only is that going to synergize with another thing that Circle of Stars can do, but being able to heal is both an action and a bonus action, allowing us to kind of heal, then use a Circle of Stars action, or use a regular attack and then heal afterwards. We're going to gain a lot of just kind of overall survivability by having both healing spells, so I recommend picking all of these up. At Druid level 2 we get to choose our subclass, and of course we're going with Circle of the Stars. This is going to give us access to a lot of things. We're going to get a new thing called Star Map Charges, which allows us to cast Guiding Bolt without actually needing a spell slot, and this resource we get a little bit more of it as we level up, but not too much. Otherwise, we still get Guiding Bolt added to our normal spell list to be cast with spell slots. As I said, we're going to get Guidance as a cantrip, as well as our new Starry Form. We can expend wild shape charges rather than turning into an animal. We get to kind of imbue ourselves with the powers of certain constellations, including Archer, Chalice, and Dragon, all of which we can make proper use of. Archer is probably the one most people are going to use, allowing us to gain a luminous arrow attack that we can use as a bonus action, which allows us to attack with pure radiant damage in the form of kind of a ranged spell attack. So now we have an extra attack with our bonus action that works at range. Now this is treated like a kind of spell attack like that is ranged, so in melee range you won't really be able to use this too effectively, but that's why we have one of the other starry forms. But just having a free ranged attack that we can pop that does pure radiant damage at someone who's across the battlefield, like kind of attacking multiple targets at once, feels pretty damn nice. But we've also got Starry Form Chalice, probably the one that's going to be used the least, but basically whenever we cast a healing spell that consumes a spell slot, we gain Chalice Healing, which heals ourselves for or another creature that we heal for an additional 1d8 plus 3 damage. This is pretty strong. Combining this with Healing Word and Cure Wounds, if we want to make sure that we have the most survivability possible, we can be popping healing spells in between attacks and just absolutely keep ourselves up pretty much completely, especially with the damage reduction effects that this build is going to have. While I think Chalice will definitely be the one people use the least, it definitely works well with this build. And then finally, we're also going to have access to my personal favourite, Starry Form Dragon. Starry Form Dragon is amazing. Whenever you make a saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, a roll of a 9 or lower is considered a 10. This alone makes concentration saving throws incredible. Even with only having 14 constitution and no constitution saving throw proficiency, the only time I ever dropped concentration in any of my testing was when I was knocked prone, in which dropping concentration is guaranteed. Otherwise, I never ever lost concentration from being hit by an attack. This is an insane feature that honestly, any spellcaster that's willing to pick up 2 levels of Druid just to get this is instantly way stronger. It's probably the most broken feature on this subclass by far, and the ability isn't even done yet, because as a bonus action we can also cast Dazzling Breath. With a dexterity saving throw, as a bonus action we can do 2d6 plus our wisdom modifier, radiant damage spewed out in a cone in front of us, and on a save the target still takes half damage. That's pretty damn insane. For a single ability to have both of these effects is absolutely brilliant. And at level 5 of Druid, Dazzling Breath gains an additional d6 of damage, making it 3d6 plus our Wisdom modifier, which the other forms don't really get any sort of boost at those levels, but Dazzling Breath does. By far, Starry Form Dragon is the most stacked single ability in the game, almost, I would say. There's a couple of others I think surpass it, but it's definitely up there. And I would say there is definitely going to be a Bahamut Radiant Damage Paladin Stars Druid build in the future with a Dragonborn, because holy hell, that sounds like fun. Because again, this is basically Dragonborn's Breath Attack. So yeah, all that at level 2 of Druid, which is insane. We also do get to prepare another spell at this level, and kind of keeping on the Githyanki theme for psychic stuff, let's grab Charm Person. And with that, we're going to jump back over to Ranger to continue the martial climb. We've already got most of what we want from Druid just from level 2, so now we can focus freely on our other stuff, meaning that we're now going to move up to our subclass, and we are actually going to take Hunter. While I do think Gloomstalker could work, or even Swarmkeeper if you want to get into some weird kind of stuff later on, but for a Lae'zel build, I think Hunter does make sense. We get to choose a kind of style of hunting, so again, we're kind of just picking a target that we want to make sure we can absolutely take on in combat. For us, that could be Mind Flayers, or even to start, or even other Githyanki later on, and as such, I do think getting Colossus Slayer here, which the name doesn't make sense, but the ability certainly does, allowing us to, once per turn, whenever a weapon attack deals damage, we deal an extra 1d8 damage if the target is below its hit point maximum. So, we attack, then with extra attack, our next attack does 1d8, and then all of our first attacks in a turn will deal an additional 1d8 every turn. It's just more damage, and it feels great, because again, since it's extra damage, it's going to synergize with some features that we're going to be getting later, allowing us to pop off multiple extra damage procs. Again, I'll talk about that when we get to the equipment section, but it is going to synergize really nicely with this build. As for our spells, I mean, you can kind of see that thanks to Druid we have access to most spells, so I guess we can pick up Hail of Thorns. If you want to throw a regular bow on this build so you can still make ranged attacks with an action, you absolutely can, but all of the bows and crossbows do use our dexterity modifiers, so this might not be as useful as you would expect on this build, which is a bit of a shame, but hey, we might as well take it unless you want to rather prepare something else, like a good snack. To be honest, I love a good snack on all builds, so we're just going to take Good Berry. We're also going to get Misty Step once per long rest from our Githyanki feature. And yeah, that's pretty much it for level 5. Damn. At range of level 4, we are going to get our first feat of the build. This means that we are going to be able to pick up something like an ability score improvement, which I think is going to make the most sense at this stage. Now, it's up to you whether you want to focus more on the features of the Druid stuff, in which case you can go for Wisdom first, or if you want to focus more on your martial attacks, instead going for Strength first. I will go for Strength first. I mean, you probably would really benefit from using the Potion of Everlasting Vigour on this build if you're not going to use it on another character, in which case I would absolutely pick that up, which would give you a bit more freedom in how you can spend your ability scores here, but I'll keep them a bit more well-rounded here. So we'll start off with an 18 in Strength. At range of level 5, we're going to be grabbing Extra Attack. Well, we all know what this does, I don't feel the need to explain that in detail. We're also getting access to level 2 spells, and I like the idea of grabbing Silence here, as again, it's just another tactical thing you can do in combat to shut down enemy spellcasters, which you never know when that could be useful. Now, you could go to level 6 of Ranger here if you want, giving you access to Sanctified Stalker and another resistance like Wasteland Wanderer Cold, because you know, spaces of vacuum, it's kinda cold. But I do feel like we gain slightly more value out of sticking with Druid for the rest of our levels here, so let's talk about that next. Unfortunately, my spell selection did get all sorts of messed up, so let's fix that quickly and then pick our 2 new spells. I'm definitely grabbing Hold Person. This definitely feels like on theme for a Githyanki build. Again, in all of my kind of psychic Githyanki builds, I pretty much always take this spell, and today is no different. But because we're also attached to the stars and radiant damage is kind of our thing, let's grab Moonbeam, allowing us to cool down a beam of light that damages any creature that enters the beam or starts its turn in the light. And again, because it's concentration based, if we're going with Styroform Dragon, you're just going to get this up all the time. It's free extra damage each turn. You can move the beam around. You know, I think it's great. At Druid level 4, we do get to choose another cantrip, and honestly, none of these really fit anymore. I don't know, Poison Spray, Dirty Pocket Sand. Anyways, moving on, we do get to choose another spell at this level, and again, we kind of have everything that I would say I would want from a build like this, but I kind of do like the idea of having Flaming Spear as another kind of way of dealing damage, and it's like you've kind of got like a miniature star on the battlefield with you, or like a meteor or something. I don't know, it feels kind of cool, but in that similar vein, you could also grab something like Heat Metal to heat things up, and Flame Blade to grab a new type of weapon, but again, we are mainly sticking to the Githyanki weaponry here. We also do get to choose another ability score improvement or feat at this point. Now, I will say, again, if you do some equipment chicanery, maybe you do some stuff with, like, again, the Potion of Everlasting Vigour, so you don't need an ability score improvement into your strength. You could have taken an ability score improvement into your wisdom first and grabbed Great Weapon Master here for extra damage, which obviously would be great. We have a lot of features that would synergize with this, allowing us to offset the penalty really, really easily. But again, I'm not taking the Potion of Everlasting Vigour into account with this build, and in my testing, I didn't use Great Weapon Master, and the build was still very, very strong without it. Not as offensively powerful, but definitely it doesn't need it, it's just more on top. But again, use the Potion of Everlasting Vigour on this build, and you can still come out of this with an 18 in 2 of your main stats, and extra damage on top, so feel free again to play around with that buff if you can. But for now, we are going to take an ability score improvement to our wisdom to buff up all of our wisdom based abilities. At level 5 of Druid, we're going to get another star map charge, allowing us to use Guiding Bolt once again, up to 3 times now, I believe, without needing to use our spell slots, which is nice. We're also going to gain access to level 3 spells, but at this point, again, we kind of have everything that I would want. I'm going to grab Daylight because, again, it's light-based and it makes sense for the lore of the build. And again, vampires beware. But also, I would say just pick up another level 1 or 2 spell that you think fits the build. I like having Enhance ability just in case, because there's pretty much always a use case for it, so we can grab that here. At Druid level 6, we're going to get another one of our Circle of Stars abilities. We're going to get Cosmic Omen. This uses its own unique charges. I believe we have 3 at the moment, and Cosmic Omen is kind of fun for a build like this. Whenever you long rest, you consult the stars for a Cosmic Omen of weal or woe. The Omen grants you the ability to increase weal or decrease woe, attack rolls and saving throws to increase your allies' ability ability checks. So basically, it kind of works like Tide of Chaos from Wild Magic Sorcerer, College of Law's Bardic Inspiration debuff or buff, you know, type of things like that, or even the Lucky Feat. It allows you to manipulate rolls, which I think is really, really cool. I love the idea of us being engaged in combat and we're like kind of back and forth, you know, back and forth like in melee combat with the swords and like spell slinging and all that, and we're just able to like kind of predict our enemies' movements and dodge out of the way of things or land decisive blows because of our Cosmic Omen giving us these hints of how things are going to go. I actually really like this as kind of like a way of like using the stars to amplify our martial prowess, so I think this is great. And again, mixing this with Starry Form Dragon, again, you're just never dropping concentration. So overall, I feel like it's pretty damn cool. We also do get to choose another spell at this level, and honestly, just pick whatever. And finally, at Druid level 7, we do gain access to level 4 spells, and because of all of our multiclassing, we now actually have a 5th level spell slot, which is going to feel pretty nice on this build. Now we get access to level 4 spells, it's entirely up to you what you want to grab here. Again, kind of leaning into the Psychic Githyanki thing, I like to pick up Confusion, allowing us to debuff enemies, making them wander around, attack at random, and even skip their turns. I think it's quite a fun spell. And again, this is kind of a weird one, but trust me when I say it makes sense for the build. Stone Skin. Turn a creature's flesh as hard as stone. It only takes half the damage from non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, essentially giving us barbarians resistance. Now, I found that, especially because at this stage of the game you're going to be fighting some pretty hard-hitting enemies, Stone Skin provides a unique advantage in combat. Because we basically never drop concentration with this build, it is essentially free resistance as long as we don't cast any other concentration spells, which we don't really need to. And as such, with Stone Skin, we just basically become this walking bulwark of defense, a bit similar to a barbarian, but without the rage limitations. I don't think this is as useful in the early to mid games, as you're really not going to be taking that much damage that this is going to feel like it's a massive boost, but in the end game, you will really see the effects of this come into place. If you need a more defensive, self-sustaining playstyle, this really works. I find this works great against the Steel Watchers and the Steel Watcher boss fight, with like that special one in the factory. Like, I feel like there's a lot to work with here, and I just think this is an overall fun and reliable utility spell to use with this combo. Again, it's basically free physical resistance. Can't say no to that. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a really good all-rounder once again. We've got great ranged spell attacks, we've got great damage types, we've got radiant and all that, which is not very often resisted. We've got great defensive options, we basically never drop concentration and we can become really tanky, a bit more on that in a minute. We've got amazing healing if we want that as well, and we've just got a bunch of different options for being able to deal with different situations. And again, we've got all the fun usual utility spells. We're just doing pretty damn good. We're going to be pretty good in a lot of situations. Again, maybe not so much the face of the party, although things like guidance can help with that. Overall, this build just does a lot of things well. Now again, if you're not a huge fan of the Ranger levels, which I can understand, swap it out for the other classes I mentioned at the start of this video, and you can definitely play around with what this build can kind of do. But again, with things like Colossus Slayer allowing us to do extra damage, again carrying over damage riders, which I'll get into in a minute, you're actually going to be dealing a pretty significant amount of damage output. And again, you grab that Potion of Everlasting Vigour, and you've got Great Weapon Master on this build as well, you're going to feel just as powerful as any of those other classes. So again, feel free to play around with this one. I do think there's a lot of room to kind of make this build your own based on your own leveling scheme and what you think works well. So overall, have fun with it. It's got a lot of room for customization, and the overall concept will be strong no matter what. So let's take a look at the equipment, which is again where this build really starts to shine, no pun intended. First up, our weapon of choice. I mean, we're playing Lae'zel. This is basically Lae'zel's weapon, and it's literally called the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. If I didn't use it on this build, I would be considered a failure as a build creator, which a lot of people already consider me as, but you know, whatever. Basically, as long as a Githyanki holds this weapon, it deals an additional 1d6 psychic damage, which is great. Again, that's another damage rider for us to use. And a Githyanki holds this weapon will have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Amazing. Resistance to psychic damage, and cannot be charmed. All of that is amazing, plus it's a +3 weapon. And it comes with a unique attack called Soul Breaker, dealing even more psychic damage and possibly stunning enemies. This is very effective. You're going to want to use that as much as you can. Moving on, though, to our early game option as well, which I forgot to grab. Whoops, I could have swore I did. But you can grab a lesser version of this called the Soulbreaker Greatsword. Wiki page for it will be linked in the description, which basically comes with everything you see here, but I don't think it comes with the psychic resistance, and it comes with slightly less psychic damage, but it still comes with the Soulbreaker attack. It's basically just an early game version of this weapon, and this is just a straight upgrade to that. So yeah. There you go. No ranged weapon on this build as we don't really need it, but I don't think this build would say no to the Darkfire Shortbow if you wanted to slap it on there. And then you take Wasteland Wanderer Poison instead from Ranger, and all of a sudden you've got 4 resistances on this build, making you once again very, very tanky. Now, let's have a look at the equipment. First off, we have the Circlet of Hunting. You gain a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls against creatures marked by Hunter's Mark, True Strike, Fairy Fire, or Guiding Bolt. Well, we can do 2 of those, so that's 3 extra chance to hit for us basically all of the time. I wanted to include this obviously because it synergizes really nicely with the build, but I can definitely see why people would want to go for stronger options maybe once they get to Act 3, and of course all the usual endgame equipment will work here, so pick your poison. But again, if you're going down that Great Weapon Master route, definitely give this a look, because Hunter's Mark adding that extra damage, plus Colossus Slayer, plus Great Weapon Master, plus this helping offset the penalty, it's going to be a pretty potent combo. So again, if you get that Potion of Everlasting Vigour, which I'm strongly recommending for this build, then the Circlet of Hunting will absolutely see some value for you, and it's an Act 2 option, so it's not too late into the game. But again, there's an earlier game option that could also work nicely for this build and the theme, which is the Holy Lance Helm. Creatures who miss their attack rolls against the wearer must make a dexterity saving throw, which I believe the DC for that is 14, or take 1d4 radiant damage. Basically, people will take radiant damage just for trying to attack you, which is kind of fun. Moving on, we got the Cloak of Protection, giving us an extra bit of armor class and saving throw bonus. It's not really a huge thing. Overall, it's just meant to kind of give us a slightly higher AC, maxing out at about 19 when all is said and done, thanks to defense, our armor, and that. Speaking of our armor, the Rippling Force Mail. You gain Force Conduit when taking slashing, piercing, or bludgeoning damage. Basically, the way that Force Conduit works is for every turn that you have, you take less damage from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. If the entity takes damage while it has 5 or more turns remaining, it deals 1d4 force damage in a 6-meter radius. But here's the thing, technically you're supposed to lose your Force Conduit charges when you deal that extra force damage out. But because it triggers when you get hit, you immediately get more charges, and every time you get hit with the Rippling Force Mail, you actually gain 2 charges, even though it's not specified. There's basically this infinite feedback loop of having damage reduced against you by up to 5, and then dealing force damage. That force damage carries out as allows us to have damage riders work on it as well. And again, I'm doing a lot of talk about damage riders, and you'll see why in a minute. But overall, the Rippling Force Mail is just going to give us more defense and more damage output that feels in line with the build. It's like you take enough damage and your psychic prowess just boom, shoots out. Very, very much Orpheus-like. Speaking of psychic prowess, the Haraknir Bracers. This allows us to cast Mage Hand as a bonus action, just adding onto our basic Githyanki kit, but also gives us the ability to use Telekinesis using our Strength modifier for the casting, which is very important for this build. It allows us to use Telekinesis, and as long as we're concentrating on it, we can just chuck people and items around pretty much freely. Now, this is more of a flavor and lore thing for Githyanki specifically, so feel free to swap this out for any of the more powerful endgame options if you like the Legacy of the Masters for more damage overall, but I do think this is a fun addition, and people who know how to use Telekinesis in fun and creative ways will get a lot out of that on this build. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, Star Warrior with Telekinesis, I have kind of just made a Jedi again, haven't I? But regardless, it's pretty fun, so I highly recommend it. Speaking of more Githyanki equipment, the Boots of Psionic Movement gives us the ability to cast I can't speak today. Gives us the ability to cast Giftborn Flying Boots as a bonus action once per long rest, allowing us to fly for 10 turns, which is great. And whenever we do cast Fly on ourselves, or fly around the battlefield, we will do an additional 1d4 psychic damage on our next attack. So it's free maneuverability, free damage, what's not to love, fits the theme of the build, but feel free to swap that out if you like. For your early game glove and boot options, for the early game I love the gloves and missile snaring. Even though it uses our dexterity modifier, just being able to, in the early game, reduce range damage attacks by up to 10 is still really, really good. And honestly, it feels very much in line with like a psychic kind of Githyanki, so just being able to deflect missiles, so I like having it here. And the early game boots I like are the acrobat shoes, giving you advantage on dexterity saving throw checks, which overall can make you more tanky against things like fireball, even with our resistance if we're able to succeed those dexterity saving throw checks, which kind of helps with our lower dexterity, but overall I do like having these options when we get access to them a bit more. Moving on to our accessories here, we've got the Amulet of Misty Step, just giving us another usage of Misty Step every short rest. Overall, pretty simple, very effective, and again, it just fits in with our basic Githyanki skill set, so I wanted to include it here. Now, I will talk about this ring first, the Ring of Free Action. It's just here for a free slot, feel free to swap this out if you like. This allows you to ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. Just gives you a bit more to work with. But a really powerful, surprisingly so option here for our other ring is the Callous Glow Ring. The wearer deals an additional 2 points of damage against creatures that are illuminated. Now, illuminated is kind of interesting. Basically, it's just any time that a creature is standing within clear light, we will do an additional 2 points of damage. What the ring does not specify in its description is that that damage is radiant damage. So now every attack we do against illuminated creatures, which could just be people standing out in the daylight, or people who are close to us because they are under the illumination of our produce flame, or the light cantrip here, if you decide to use guiding light for that, which because I forgot about produce flame, I included here, but whatever. The Callous Glow Ring actually just gives us radiant damage on pretty much everything we do, and it is a damage rider, so the extra damage from Colossus Slayer will get that radiant damage. The extra damage from things like Hunter's Mark should also get it. I'll have to do a bit more testing on that front, let me know if I got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it worked in my testing. Sorry, I do my testing for the builds like a couple of days in advance and blah 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 blah, so you know, I might get some stuff wrong here or there, please forgive me. But I know for a fact that it does also work on the Force Conduit retaliation damage. So that's kind of fun. Basically, you're able to do your 1d4 force damage plus a flat 2 radiant damage just for being attacked, which feels very, very fun. Basically, any form of damage we do onto our opponents will just take an additional 2 points of damage as long as they're illuminated. And again, thanks to Produce Flame's light effect, or you could use the Guiding Light Ring to cast a light cantrip on yourself, which would give you a slightly wider radius of light. And the best part is you don't even have to have the Guiding Light equipped. You can cast the light cantrip, unequip the ring, and still keep the light effect. So overall, the Callous Glow Ring just adds to the theme of the build by adding radiant damage, and just allows us to use it so much of all of our abilities, which is why Ranger gets a little bit of a niche, in my opinion, with this build. But obviously this does apply to Unarmed Strikes from Monk, to Paladin's Divine Smite, and any sort of things related to that. Even, like, Fighter's Battlemaster techniques would also make use of this. So, honestly, yeah, like I say, it does work with what we've got going on here, but it can work with pretty much anything. Another option for your amulet could be the Aberrations Hunter's Amulet. This is kind of more of a lore and flavor thing, obviously, but if you're up against Mind Flayers, you might as well throw this on, giving you advantage on intelligence saving throws, and Aberrations will have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. So overall, it's kind of just a fun overall small buff, but the Misty Step Amulet is useful in more general situations. And all of this is coloured in the Harlequin Black and White dye, which is vanilla. But yeah, that is the build, and overall, well, I know some people are going to have reserves about this one, but then again, I thought people were going to have reserves about the Gale build, and that video was shockingly popular, even more popular than the Hexblade video, which was already very popular. So, like, honestly, I think you guys are clearly willing to hear me out on my crazy bullshit. So please, give this a try. I think for the kind of, again, eye squint, if you look at it, kind of lore that we've come up with here for the character, I do think that it can make sense. But obviously, like I say, play this with any martial class that you want. Monk, I think, would work the absolute best, but obviously Fighter and Paladin obviously can use this quite effectively as well. The world is your oyster, play around with it. We're mainly here for the Stars Druid buffs, and I'll be honest, the reason I didn't go like 10 levels of Fighter and 2 levels of Stars Druid is because I actively did want to show off more of Stars Druid in this build than anything else, because again, we're playing with the new toys and that's what people want to see. but I could absolutely see just slapping 2 levels of Stars Druid into any martial build that you want to make with Lae'zel, and you will get basically the same benefits overall. So really, there's a ton of freedom with this concept. Again, a lot of people come to my videos for like the lore-inspired builds, which is what this is, and it's my justification for using the benefits of Stars Druid on a Lae'zel build, and I feel like with that justification, you can make serious like effort into just putting this sort of playstyle into effect with a ton of different builds. So honestly, go nuts. This is basically the loosest guideline I've ever made in any video, pretty much, so go crazy. Have fun with it. Let me know what you would do with this concept, and, you know, put it in the comments below and all that sort of thing. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.